Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked where I climb the Online Series 11 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. In the previous episode, I had featured a really interesting physical Seismitoad team, so I'll be playing a couple more matches with it today. I actually ended up facing the final opponent from yesterday's episode in this one as well, and that's game 3 for today if you want to just skip to that, but as always, I think all the games are pretty interesting. So, thanks so much as always for watching Road to Ranked. If you enjoy, please share support by leaving a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Question of the day, I want to know what you think the hardest Pokemon game that you've ever played is, or just hardest Pokemon game in general is, down in the comments section below. And yeah, let's just get started. Details for the team are in the description below, including the original creator's Twitter, as well as a team report written by them in Japanese, rental, and paste. So feel free to try out the team yourselves. Let's get started. Alright, first game of the day, and it's a Palkia team. I feel like it's been a while since we've gone up against Palkia, so that's pretty cool. Generally, I like our matchup here. I think both Seismitoad and Kyogre can be really strong here. I don't think we bring Incineroar, has so little value for us. Pretty interesting to see Nihilego. It's actually been a while since I fought that. It's actually decently strong against us. The main question I have is what I should bring as my final Pokemon. Because I definitely want Grim, Kyogre, and Seismitoad. And I don't want Incineroar. So it's between Ferrothorn and Zapdos. Zapdos does have Eerie Impulse, which is actually really nice against the Palkia here. Ferrothorn can Iron Defense, Body Press up. That's also honestly not too bad here in this matchup. I haven't really brought Ferrothorn thus far, and I feel like this could be an okay time for it, so I don't mind leading Grimmsnarl, and what do I want to lead it with? Grimmsnarl and Kyogre is actually pretty interesting thanks to the Assault Vest, I think, with Ferrothorn and Seismitoad in the back. They don't really have a great way to control the weather here unless they have Sunny Day on Whimsicott, or Palkia has a max move that allows them to change the weather outside of Max Geyser. So we'll see how things play out. I think, I expect Palkia to Dynamax very frequently here, but you could max Landorus and even Nihilego to an extent, but it's probably Meteor Beam Power of Nihilego. And it's going to be Whimsicott Nihilego as a lead. Okay. I don't mind this too much. I think this is relatively free for us to just go for a Light Screen into a Origin Pulse, most likely. I could just Water Spout as well, honestly, mainly because I'm not going to take that much damage from Nihilego here anyway. And I could see them Sludge Bombing the Grimmsnarl slot. You're only switching into a Water type attack is Palkia. So, yeah, I don't mind starting off with the Light Screen here. And I don't mind just Water Spouting here because we have Assault Vest and Light Screen, so Kyogre just doesn't have to worry about taking that much damage. They're not going to protect or switch out either Pokemon, so I think that's a pretty good trade for us. We got Light Screen up. They actually just go for Dazzling Gleam, so no Tailwind either. Okay, Dazzling Gleam into Sludge Bomb on Grimmsnarl certainly makes some sense to try to just pick up the knockout onto that. But they're actually not even able to pick up the KO, which is huge because this means I just get a KO now if you're not Focus Sash on Nihilego. Beautiful. Water Spout does so much damage in a Whimsicott as well. The other really pivotal thing about this is now I can go for a Scary Face onto whatever is coming in. So even if you Tailwind with Whimsicott, the Seismitoad in the back can just outspeed you. So I think I really like our positioning right now. They bring in Palkia, which is totally okay. I even have Ferrothorn as a potential switch in into that. But here I think we don't really need Reflect in this game. It doesn't really help that much. Again, I mean, Incineroar doesn't really matter. Landorus, it obviously helps against, but, only if Landorus is maxing, then Urshifu can crit through anyway. And I think Urshifu being my opponent's last Pokemon makes a lot of sense to me. So, yeah, I don't mind just going for a Scary Face onto Palkia here and going for an Ice Beam onto Whimsicott. This sets up the Seismitoad for the endgame, and they are going to Dynamax Palkia, which I'm okay with. Once again, this is the combination of having Light Screen plus the strength of Assault Vest Kyogre, and I think AB Kyogre is really cool. We've used it a couple of times on the channel already, but previously, you would expect to see, for example, Sea Incense, Wave Incense, or the Choice Scarf, and those were I felt by far the most common items, but, this Assault Vest Kyogre I think is really intriguing. Ooh, okay, they have Fake Tears. Okay, I'm okay with that, honestly. You're not going to pick up the knockout here, I think, even with Fake Tears, thanks to Assault Vest and Light Screen. And if they don't pick up the KO onto us here, they're going to be in really bad shape, because you're essentially going to spend 2 turns to KO my Kyogre, and I'll have staggered my Dynamax pretty substantially. I could always consider withdrawing Kyogre out into Ferrothorn this next turn as well, but I'm not sure we actually really need to do that. Oh, okay, they do have Max Lightning, though. Maybe this does pick up the knockout, then. Oh, we survived with 7 HP. Very nice. Okay. So, Max Lightning Palkia makes sense. You know, you normally want to run Spatial Rend, Hydro Pump, Protect, and then a fourth move could be Trick Room, could be an electric type attack like Palkia has here. And that obviously gives you really good coverage into Kyogre, which otherwise you might not have like the best coverage into. Okay, the final one is going to be Dark Urshifu. I'm up 4-2, but this is still rather scary. Ooh, do I outspeed Palkia is the question with Grimmsnarl. Depends on its speed investment here, I think, right? 164, is Palkia actually slower than I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm willing to Spirit Break here into the Urshifu slot and just sacrifice Kyogre here. It might have been better to actually just click Ice Beam into Urshifu. Okay, they're going to just go for Wicked Blow. Now, what's interesting here is, yeah, I mean, I would assume you Wicked Blow into the Kyogre slot. Didn't really make too much sense to switch out either Pokemon here, but this is where now I think like Zapdos would have been a better fourth Pokemon for me to have, and if I had Zapdos in the back, we actually outspeed with the Grimmsnarl. Okay, that actually should allow us to just win the game then. And they're not Focus Sash on that either, so it's probably choiced. But in the common scenario in which it is just Focus Sash on the Urshifu, now granted on my opponent's team there's so many Pokemon that, you know, potentially want to run Focus Sash, Whimsicott, now Ego, and Urshifu. So Urshifu being choiced here makes sense, but yeah. I don't know if Ferrothorn was the correct decision, especially because they did have an Incineroar as well as an Urshifu, and I feel like it's actually kind of hard for this Pokemon to get set up. So ends up not making a difference here, but I think I'd always have preferred Zapdos in this Urshifu Palkia endgame. I guess the main thing is I wasn't expecting the Now Ego lead. If anything, I was expecting it in the back. I felt like Now Ego was, you know, pretty weak into both the Kyogre and the Seismitoad. So if anything, it was a good thing that my opponent led with both of those, right? I'm just going to Leech Seed Palkia here. I'm going to Dynamax, and we should just Max Quake here. That increases our special defense. And I think with Light Screen, okay, they actually just end up forfeiting. Might be still worth to play it out like one turn here, see if you can get a crit, but yeah, I was thinking maybe you go for the crit Geyser onto the Seismitoad, pick up a knockout onto that, and then, you know, Spatial Rend or Hydro Pump a bunch of crits onto Ferrothorn. The odds were very much in our favor there, but I didn't think it was 100% over yet, but I don't know the calc from Palkia onto Seismitoad. So, yeah. Ultimately, that was one in which, yeah, we didn't even end up needing to Dynamax, but it's because we had a strong early game, and once again, like, I think Seismitoad can be really strong as an early game option, but even stronger as a late game option because there are very few Pokemon that can resist its attacks. So if you can stall out your opponent's Dynamax completely and then max Seismitoad, then you're in a really good position. So that's kind of what I was going for here. I think even though we ended up winning Ferrothorn, I'm not sure I really like my decision to bring it, and I think Zapdos may have been better just because in order for Ferrothorn to thrive, it does rely on a lot, right? Like, my opponent has Incin and Urshifu. Both of those can hit Ferrothorn for super effective. Spatial Rend and Hydro Pump and Rain with Life Orb Palkia also does a fair amount as well, so that's another thing to watch out for. Kyogre surviving was a really big deal here, and then, yeah, the Grimmsnarl indeed outspeeding the Palkia was also a really big deal, so once again, the upside of Fake Tears. Even if you're max speed Palkia, I just don't remember the speeds that it hits off the top of my head as to whether or not we outspeed with the Urshifu, or sorry, with the Grimmsnarl. It's pretty close. But either way, let's just look for our next game here. Next game of the day here, and it is an opposing Kyogre team. I, on paper, really don't like this matchup because they have Rillaboom. If they didn't have Rillaboom, I think Seismitoad would just completely demolish this game, but the tricky thing about Rillaboom is that, you know, if I max Seismitoad, I don't have Max Guard on this, right? So it's basically just very vulnerable to Rillaboom going for a Grassy Glide onto us, which I think is really scary. So I think Zapdos might be a really important Pokemon for us. Okay, I think it's Zapdos, Grimmsnarl, Kyogre, and Seismitoad in this one. I think Ferrothorn just takes a little bit too much damage too quickly from my opponent's end, especially considering like Kyogre and the Kingdra are special attackers. So it's like even if I Iron Defense up, well, I don't have Power Whip for them, and I can't really stall out the game. My opponent just has too much damage. And Incineroar just doesn't have that much value here other than a switch it into Rillaboom, but it's entirely way too weak to Kyogre and Kingdra, as well as the fact that we can't intimidate Mamoswine if they're oblivious, which, you know, most likely is the case. So I think I'm just going to go Zapdos, Grimm, Kyogre, Seismitoad, and the question is in what order. What are the odds they lead Rillaboom here? Because it would be really interesting to just lead with Seismitoad and Grimmsnarl with Zapdos and Kyogre in the back. I don't mind that too much. I wanted to go Grimmsnarl plus Zapdos, but my fear with that lead is if they just lead Mamoswine, I'm super, super, super weak to it. So with Seismitoad, I can put on a lot of offensive pressure on turn 1, and it's still pretty strong as a non-Dynamax option. Now, if we can eliminate Rillaboom in this game as quickly as possible, then I can really thrive with Seismitoad, but that's easier said than done. I think Rillaboom plus Mamoswine would actually be a really good lead by them. But they're going to go with Gieleki plus the Urshifu. Okay, I don't mind this very much. That's interesting. If you're going with these two, I assume you have Rillaboom and Kyogre in the back. I guess there's a world in which you drop the Kyogre. I really don't want to max Seismitoad here. If I were my opponent, though, I would Volt Switch into Grimmsnarl and then bring out Rillaboom. So I could make that read and just Life Orb max Airstream. Okay, given what my opponent brought, if you didn't bring... I assume you have Rillaboom in the back, meaning you don't have Mamoswine, and that could actually be a really big deal for Zapdos, right? I'm actually going to go for the max Airstream play here, I think. Light Screen. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about this. Mainly because I feel like Zapdos is probably a better max option if my opponent's back to a Rillaboom and Kyogre, but it's also really strong as a non-max max option, whereas Seismitoad feels considerably weaker. And if they Volt Switch into Rillaboom, turn 1, I feel like I just win the game. if we KO with Life Orb max Airstream. Maybe Gieleki protects. That's also okay with me. Okay, so we get Light Screen up. They don't switch or Dynamax either Pokemon. No protect, so I'm really hoping to see a Volt Switch here. Nice. Okay, bring in Rillaboom right now. See, even if I make this prediction correctly, do I love it? I don't know, because if they just stayed in protected and, I don't know, switch Urshifu out into Rillaboom, that'd be really bad. I don't even know if Life Orb Airstream KOs here. That's the other question. What's that? No, they actually bring Kyogre. Okay, so they don't risk bringing in Rillaboom immediately, which I think is pretty smart, actually. Did they not bring Rillaboom at all, then? That's also another possibility. Either way, great damage from Max Airstream. Unfortunately, now I reveal that I have it, but that's fine. Kyogre taking that much damage this early on is always a good start. And they're just going to Wicked Blow. Feels like Choice Band damage there, but I'm not 100% sure. I will just Airstream into the Urshifu slot and then go for a Reflect here, I think. Yeah. That turn obviously could have played out better. If they do bring in Rillaboom there, I really feel like it's very difficult for them to win the game. So they're not going to protect here or switch either Pokemon out. I've got Light Screen up now. I'm going to go for another Max Airstream, this time on Urshifu. Yep, okay. I think that's Choice Band given how much Wicked Blow did, but I'm not 100% sure. Now is an opportunity for them to bring in Rillaboom. And I actually can see what they're positioning themselves for. It's potentially a Dynamax Gieleki endgame for them, which I think would be pretty strong. I don't think Water Spout KOs here, right? Okay, amazing. We survived. That's a really big deal. I mean, you bring out Rillaboom here now, right? If you have it. Interesting. They just straight up didn't bring Rillaboom into this matchup. Wow. Okay. I did not see that coming. Oh, I've got Scary Face, so I can always Scary Face Kingdra. No problem. I think Max Quake into Kyogre here and just Scary Face into Kingdra is okay. I wonder if Kingdra Dynamax is here. If I were my opponent, I would actually max the Gieleki in the back. Because the thing is, if you actually Dynamax Kingdra here, you can only knock out one of my two Pokemon, right? Which actually is really good for us, in my opinion. And it also means Gieleki is not Dynamaxing, which is also good news. This is where Scary Face is so good, by the way, because now I have this Eerie Impulse Lapdos, so I can just decrease Kingdra's special attack before it gets another attack off. So, yeah, I'm actually... Rillaboom and Mamoswine were like the two Pokemon I was most nervous about, and my opponent actually did not bring either, which I'm really surprised about, but I'll take it. But I guess if anything, if they had brought Rillaboom, they may have been baited into bringing it out, and we would have just, like, won the game potentially immediately. So, here's Life Orb Max Quake. That's going to get a knockout. So now we're at +1 special defense with both. Doesn't really make a difference here. I think Kingdra gets a knockout onto either, but maybe there's a small chance Grimmsnarl can survive, and that'd be really nice, because it would allow me to get a Scary Face off into the Regieleki. And we do survive after Life Orb. Perfect. Oh, okay. They have Max Airstream here. I think we might survive this. That's one of those scenarios where I think my opponent just wasn't expecting either Scary Face or the special defense boost from Max Quake. So they were thinking, well, I can always just get this knockout in front of me and get a speed boost, so might as well get the speed boost. But it kind of reminds me of yesterday's match when I went for... Was it yesterday? Or 2 days ago when I went for Max Darkness with Thundurus to try to lower my opponent's special defense. And then it didn't end up KOing the Landorus, so... Let's see. Now we should be in a really, really good spot. There's still 2 turns of rain. Kyogre is in the back here. I've got Seismitoad, obviously. I think going for a Stomping Tantrum onto a Lecky here is fine. And I don't mind going for a Scary Face onto it as well. I mean, a Lecky protecting here seems fairly obvious, right? Where's the Focus Sash on my opponent's team? Mamoswine or a Lecky? I don't mind covering for a Lecky here. And I actually think it's fine to maybe... I could Spirit Break Kingdra. You would only knock out 1 Pokemon here, though, if you're my opponent. So, actually, I'm down to just Scary Face Lecky and Stomping it. And if a Lecky protects, so be it. That's fine. Oh, they don't even protect. Okay, that should just be game over, then. Because now my Zapdos outspeeds both of my opponent's Pokemon. So you can see why a Scary Face is so valuable here on Grimmsnarl. Thunder Wave is, a nice speed control alternative as well. And they're not Focus Sash either, so they just give me the knockout. Beautiful. Now, even if a Lecky protects there, it's not the end of the world, right? Because the thing is, like, Kingdra, by Dynamaxing, can only pick up 1 knockout at a time, and that's why I was actually thinking it might be smarter for my opponent to not Dynamax Kingdra if you're running a spread-type attack like Muddy Water. But it might just be the case that it's running, like, Draco Meteor, Hydro Pump, Hurricane, and Protect, and so you can't even go for any spread-type attacks. But if they had spread-type attacks, but they could have potentially picked up a double knockout previously, and then conserve your Dynamax for Regieleki. That's, I think, one path I was thinking my opponent could take to win this game. But... ultimately, I think it's really interesting because, yeah, they were probably thinking, hey, I have Rillaboom, my opponent must be scared of Rillaboom, so maybe they don't play towards Seismitoad, but in my eyes, Seismitoad was so good in this matchup, we just had to be careful around Rillaboom, and given that my opponent let a Lecky into Seismitoad, we were already in a pretty good spot on turn 1 because there wasn't too much a Lecky could go for. So here, I'm just going to go for Eerie Impulse, and I'm going to go for Thunder. And we should be in a pretty good spot. Kingdra here could actually still pull off the comeback, but I think with Assault Vest Kyogre and with Light Screen being up, there's not much my opponent can do. Now, the one thing is they are faster since they've boosted their speed a bunch via Max Airstream, so it kind of negates the drops that I've gotten on them, but as you see here, Zapdos is bulky enough to survive, and truthfully, even if we weren't bulky enough here, it would still be a Kyogre versus Kingdra endgame in which I'm full HP, I have Assault Vest, and I have Thunder. And your best damage is probably going to come from something like Hurricane or, interesting if Rain stops as well. Actually, I wonder if it was correct to go for Roost there rather than Thunder this turn. But, because, like, I'm just going to go for Ice Beam instead of Thunder. Because they're at +2, or they're neutral speed, never mind, so we're still good. Yeah, I'm always just going to Roost here, since you're not going to KO us at -2, and then Ice Beam onto Kingdra here also works. So... yeah, I think we're in a really good spot at this point, and yeah, like, Kingdra could maybe win if you get a couple of crits, but actually, I think with us having Assault Vest on Kyogre, there's really not much they can do, so Seismitoad honestly put in a lot more work than I expected in this one, and I'm really pleased about its performance, and it made it a lot easier that they didn't bring in Rillaboom or Mamoswine. Those were actually 2 of the Pokemon I was most scared of, and I didn't really think a Lecky would come out in this matchup, but we were able to use our opponent's Lecky to our advantage and put my opponent in, like, pretty awkward positions, so yeah, let's look for one more. Alright, next game here, and this might be a rematch of yesterday's episode, right? Because I think I played the same player at the end of Game 3 yesterday, and I lost. They're still using the same team. And the adjustment I wanted to make in that one was bringing Zapdos, right? Because they led Thundurus plus Calyrex, and I got wrecked by that. Actually, the early game was really good. I got wrecked by Calyrex Shadow Rider in the late game. So I'm kind of intrigued by Zapdos. I think I'm going to drop Incin this time around, but that team that we had just featured that we're going up against right now is truly just super, super strong. And now my opponent knows I have the Scary Face tech on Grimmsnarl as well, which might make things a little bit more difficult. I think I'm still down for Grim Seismitoad, Kyogre, and yeah, I'm just going to bring Zapdos around. That was my adjustment that I wanted to make after the game yesterday. Ferrothorn still does not make too much sense to me here, and Incin has proven itself to be really weak if they bring Urshifu, so much to the point where it's completely useless. Now, this is one interesting thing my opponent can do as an adjustment, where they expect me to not bring Incin, and as a result, drop the Urshifu. Urshifu is considerably weaker if you're going up against Zapdos, right? But it's very, very strong to Incineroar and Ferrothorn. So a lot of approaches here, and I still have to be very careful about the switcheroo plays from Whimsicott as well, which I'm obviously nervous about. So we'll see. Either way, though, I think, yeah, cool to go up against this. I mean, this is, I think, like, as I've reiterated, it's really just one of the best teams to climb the ladder with, the Calyrex Shadow Rider team. And even knowing its full sets here doesn't make things any easier, in my opinion. I'm going to go with Whimsicott and Calyrex. Okay. I don't want to max Seismitoad on turn 1, I think. If I were them, I could just go for a Trick onto the Seismitoad and then Astro Barrage. So let's think about what they're going to have in the back, right? Could be Thundurus Entei. I expect Thundurus in the back still. I don't mind going for... I don't mind Light Screening here, because I could see them just Moonblasting and Astro Barraging as well. Light Screen and then switch immediately out into Kyogre, I think. The idea here is if they go for the Switcheroo onto the Seismitoad, then you can't go for Trick anymore. This is what we did in the first game of yesterday's episode. And if you're locked into just Moonblast, then we know Whimsicott is basically very exposed, and Moonblast isn't that scary, especially if I get Light Screen up and I have Assault Vest Kyogre out. You could max Calyrex here. Okay, they just opt for Tailwind. That's fine. Smart to not go for Switcheroo, but at the same time, I'm okay with that, because I just can't risk staying in with Seismitoad on turn 1 of this game. Like, if I Dynamax and I just get Switcherooed and ejected out, it's just a disaster for us, but... I think my opponent may know that I know about the team, right? And so as a result, they know that I'm going to play a little bit more cautiously around Switcheroo. And that's exactly what you should do. So nicely done. Okay, now I don't think Whimsicott's actually going to want to Switcheroo, but we've actually positioned ourselves quite nicely because they don't have much damage output going into this next turn. And they don't have great water switch-ins either, which is pretty good for us. I don't mind just getting a Reflect up right now. If I were my opponent, what would I do? I'd actually protect Calyrex here, I think, and then Moonblast with Whimsicott to try to get ejected out on purpose. It's a very interesting play here, which is intentionally doubling up onto Calyrex to deny them a free switch-in. Okay, I'm actually not going to target Whimsicott here, because if I were my opponent, I would protect Calyrex in this position. Oh, okay, they actually just offer Switcheroo. That also works for me. That's actually a reason why you wouldn't need to protect. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, I had the opportunity to maybe go for a Spirit Break here on a Calyrex instead, but I don't mind this too much. I've at least forced the Switcheroo out. Now the Whimsicott can only go for Moonblast, nothing else. And you can see with the Salt Vest there, Calyrex just really doesn't do that much damage to us. Okay, cool. So now I get a free switch in. I've got Rain up, they have Tailwind up, but I can bring in Seismitoad for free. And I think that's really good for us. I don't even go into Zapdos, but I feel like I should start doing damage at some point in this game. We also want to be careful about like when we reactivate the Rain and make sure that we stall it out properly. So here it's pretty easy to go for like Scary Face into max Airstream. I can also switch Grimmsnarl out. I mean, the other question is, does Grim even feint to like a Moonblast and an Astro Barrage here? Because if not, I can obviously just go for Spirit Break on a Calyrex and then max Airstream into Whimsicott. I could also double up onto Whimsicott. That covers for any switch in and does pretty substantial damage here onto any switch out. Okay. I don't mind going for Airstream because now I'll have Rain as well as the speed boost. They're going to stay in with both Pokemon, so that's okay with me. Ideally, they just go for a Moonblast plus Astro Barrage, and Grimmsnarl survives that, and I KO Whimsicott with Airstream, and then Spirit Break breaks the Focus Sash on Calyrex. That's my hope here. So let's see. This could have gone a little bit better, I think, but it also could have gone a lot worse, so I can't complain. The only thing is, last turn I had an opportunity just to go for... Okay, they just Astro Barrage. I think Grim should survive here. If not, that's actually pretty bad. Because it surviving here not only gives us a Spirit Break... nice, okay. Hangs on with 10. Not only gives us free damage onto Calyrex, but also breaks its Focus Sash and drops its special attack. So all of that just adds up for so much. And now I can go for a potential Scary Face onto whatever is coming in, which I would expect to be Thundurus on my opponent's end. But the good thing this time, is that I have speed control, a lot better speed control, because I have the Rain, I have Tailwind, or they have Tailwind, but their Tailwind's expiring, and I have a speed boost now onto this Seismitoad. The other thing is, this time around, I did not bring the Incineroar. Incineroar would actually be pretty bad for us in this endgame, right? And that's the main lesson I learned from yesterday's episode. It's pretty tough to feel comfortable within its matchup, because yes, like, Incine's really good against the Calyrex, but that's basically it, right? Okay, so let's double check the field state. I've got both screens up right now. How many turns of Tailwind do they have left? Only one turn left. What do I think their last Pokemon is going to be is another question here. Because the thing here is that Thundurus can boost its speed, right? Via Max Airstream. You can just Max Airstream and Astro Barrage here. So I want to switch out into Zapdos, I think. Man, I went for Zapdos, and I actually am targeting Calyrex here, because part of the issue yesterday is I just ignored Calyrex too much. But if you're my opponent, you could so easily protect Calyrex right now, and that's my fear. The idea of switching out the Grimmsnarl there, by the way, is so that I can potentially get another scary face-off with it in this game. But the thing is that Assault Vest Zapdos, with us having Reflect... Sorry, Assault Vest Thundurus, with us having Reflect, isn't that scary damage-wise. The only problem here is that, yeah, they could easily protect the Calyrex right now in Airstream, but I didn't want them to Airstream into the Seismitoad and get an Astral Barrage off. Like, I think that would be really bad for us. Okay. Oh, since they're faster, maybe it was worth it to just not target it. But, actually, I think I'm decently okay with this outcome, right? Because I get the knockout here onto your Calyrex. And Calyrex was part of the problem and the reason why I lost Game 3 yesterday, because it just, like, had this crazy strong endgame with Astro Barrage. But this time around, we at least get both screens up, right? They're going to Airstream into... Ooh, into the Zapdos slot even. Okay, that's amazing. And that makes sense, right? Because you cover for any switch options, but this is exactly why I needed to bring Zapdos this time around instead. Tailwind peters out now. I still have Rain up for another turn, which is obviously quite good for us. And it's going to be Urshifu for their final Pokemon, okay? Yeah, I mean, I think we're in pretty good shape right now, right? Like, we still have another turn of Dynamax on Seismitoad and a turn of Rain. So what I can always do here is Airstream into the Urshifu slot. Because we should outspeed Thundurus right now because we have Rain and the speed boost. So if you're my opponent, you probably protect this Urshifu. But I don't want to risk them not protecting, right? It's always fine, I think, here to go for a Roost with Zapdos and a Max Airstream into the Urshifu slot. If I was confident on Max Geyser and Thunderbolt KOing the Thundurus, I could have doubled up onto it, but I'm honestly not 100% confident on that damage calc. I feel like it would be close. But the reason I'm okay with this is because, like, now I get another speed boost, my Zapdos heals back up, right? And so my Zapdos would just outspeed your Urshifu next turn. And I've got 4 Pokemon in this game still, right? With Reflect being up. So Thundurus is scary, but it doesn't really put on that much pressure damage-wise. And we're gonna trade Airstreams here. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, I guess the one thing I didn't consider is the fact that, they can Aqua Jet me. Yeah, that's a possibility. They had to protect there, so I don't know. If I was confident on Geyser and Thunderbolt knocking out Thundurus there, then that's always the play to go for. I think it would be close, but if it doesn't pick up the knockout, it could get a little bit ugly for us. Okay, so Dynamax Seismitoad ends now. What's the board state? +2 speed. +2 speed. +1 speed. Wait, we're at max speed here, right? We are. Perfect. This actually means that I can always just Thunderbolt into Urshifu, because even if you Airstream again, I'll still outpace you. And then I don't mind switching... Actually, do I need to switch out here? Still have 4 turns of Reflect to work with, so that's generally good. And Zapdos should win against Thundurus, so T-Bulk here. And just Liquidation, I think, is fine. I think us being max speed here should save us. Yeah, they go for Aqua Jet. They need a max Lightning critical hit onto Zapdos. If they don't get that, we should win the game. Oh, I should just go for Max Knuckle instead. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. But the thing is, now, I just don't think you do enough damage to everything. Like, the thing is that Thundurus can only target one Pokemon at a time, right? So I get the knockout here onto the Urshifu. I wonder if it was ever worth it to just sacrifice my Seismitoad. Or instead of switching sacrificing Seismitoad, I bring in Grimmsnarl and sacrifice it. But I think it's fine. Okay, we can just bring out Kyogre here. Because the thing is, if the Thundurus wants to do damage, it has to Wild Charge, and if you Wild Charge, then you basically do a lot of recoil to yourself, right? And the thing is, like, yes, you have this attack boost, but I still have a couple of turns of Reflect left. And between the recoil, and, like, I have healing with Zapdos thanks to Roost, which makes, I think, my opponent's life really difficult. So here I'm just going to Thunderbolt into the Thundurus and go for an Ice Beam. I do think going for Knuckle is interesting and actually keeps them in this one, because I think Wild Charge now probably KOs the Kyogre, whereas if you don't go for it, it doesn't pick up the knockout. So I think Thundurus will pick up a couple of KOs here on its way out, and my opponent's main win condition here I think is probably a critical hit onto the Zapdos. But yeah, Thunderbolt there does really good damage. So, like, you're going to take recoil here. In this position, we don't go for Scary Face because it would just end up activating Defiant, right? And that's, like, the one way we could choke this game. So, I think their win condition is still the same. It's still a critical hit onto Zapdos at some point. We've got 2 turns of Reflect left, so this game will end in 2 turns, which is good, right? So, I'm just going to Spirit Break and Thunderbolt here. And I think you have to Wild Charge Grimmsnarl here. Oh, they actually go for Zapdos. Okay, then with that, like, Spirit Break should just get the knockout by itself. But I think even if you target Grimm there, Thunderbolt, even if it doesn't finish you off, like, I was thinking my opponent's win con is you Wild Charge to KO Grimmsnarl, you don't take that much recoil, and then get a critical hit onto Zapdos the subsequent turn. But Knuckle was a really smart play, although another way they could have played it was just gone for the critical hit with Max Lightning immediately onto Zapdos, and if you get that, you probably win the game. So, yeah. I'm really glad we got a rematch here after yesterday's Game 3, because I felt like I had a really strong early game yesterday, and it just completely collapsed because Incineroar was absolutely useless. So it's kind of cool to play, like, the first 2 games of a pseudo best of 3, and you can see how I made the adjustment, right? Like, yesterday I was like, okay, Incineroar just does absolutely nothing if they bring in Urshifu, and even if they don't bring in an Urshifu, like, Incin is still really risky against Thundurus, and basically, like, in my head, it makes sense because it counters Calyrex, but it requires such a specific scenario, and it's very hard to ever be in a scenario where, like, you're up against Calyrex, but there's no Thundurus that you're activating Defiant for, or Urshifu, right? So, yeah, I think that was the opponent that we played in Game 3 yesterday, but even if not, it was interesting to play this matchup for a 3rd time, and you can see how you can learn from your mistakes, right? I think yesterday I just wasn't too sure of how to approach the matchup. I don't know if the way I'm going about it right now is 100% correct, but Zapdos was infinitely better than Incineroar would have been, and it took a couple of games to really learn that lesson. So, yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So thank you so much as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to answer the question of the day, and I'll see you all soon. All right. Peace.